really essential, and I think is sort of broadly the goal of jobs, what they're about, why you want to go there, and how the job fair can be beneficial to you as a student and as a job seeker for when you graduate from Conestoga. I want to talk a little bit about how to prepare for job fair, because that's really essential, and I think is sort of the foundation for make sure that you're going to be successful, as well as some of the best practices for when you're engaged at the job fair, because there's a lot going to be, you want to make sure that you're making a positive impression. And that's really what the rest of the list items on the list here are really speaking to, how to make that positive impression both at the event and in follow-up afterwards. So let's jump right in. In terms of what a job fair is, these are events that can be virtual, they can be in person, and they're bringing job seekers and employers together. Employers are there because they want to develop their talent pipeline and find good talent that will help them to do the things that they need to do. Job seekers obviously are looking into it because we all need jobs. So it's a win-win if things go well. And it's really, really important, though, that if you want it to go well for you as a job seeker, that you be extremely well prepared, that you've done your research, you know who you want to talk to through the rest of this presentation, and you know how to represent yourself. At each of the employers' booths, you're going to find representatives from the organizations. They may be HR personnel, they might be recruiters, or they could be staff members in other functional areas where there might be a need for staff. And they'll be there to share insights as to what the organization is all about. So a lot of wins are available for you from information gathering, from doing your job search and developing network connections. It's a really important and useful event. And this is for the job fair coming up on March 13th at Conestoga, but or like I said earlier, it's relevant for all job fairs. Really want to emphasize, events like this can be busy. Last year at the school gym, we had a couple of thousand job seekers from the student population. We had many, many employers, but it was an overwhelming experience. And if you're not ready, if you haven't done the preparation, it can be very overwhelming. So it really matters that you be prepared. In terms of some of the additional benefits, and obviously you're going to be doing that networking, and it gives you a chance to do investigation. So even if you're not looking for a job right now, although I hope you will be attending if you are looking for a job, it lets you get insights into what employers are looking for, the various employment opportunities that they offer, an understanding of what the hiring requirements are in terms of qualifications. So knowing what training, experiences, degrees, and skills they might be looking for, or other post-secondary training like the certificate programs that we offer at the college. It helps you to understand salary expectations, a little bit about the corporate culture, all sorts of benefits about going to this. So I encourage everybody who's getting ready to go, be ready when you go to take notes. So whether you're using a physical textbook, whether you're noting on your phone or another device, be ready to take notes and be ready to ask good questions that are going to be insightful and get you this type of information. Which leads to the next slide, talking about how you prepare for a job fair. It's really important that you do your homework. On March 4th, we're going to be sending out an email to the student population. There's going to be a link to the job fair site so that you can see who's going to be attending in terms of the employers. What I would encourage everybody to do is do some research based on the list of employers that you're going to see. Identify the ones that are likely to be offering jobs in areas that are meaningful for you. Make sure that you know what to wear to the job fair. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in just a moment. Use the employer list to be able to gauge whether or not you have the skill sets that employers are looking for, and they've got the opportunities that are going to really be meaningful for you. And make sure you've got some good questions jotted down that you can ask employers. And I'll tell you just off the top, one of the questions you probably want to avoid is don't ask if they're hiring. If you're asking a question like, are you hiring at a job fair? It's kind of like going to Tim Hortons and asking if they sell donuts and coffee. The answer is yes, they're there for a reason. They're at the job fair to hire, but they want to hire the right people. So make sure you've got good questions to ask them. In terms of research, I would say based on the list of employers that are taking part, identify a reasonable number of people or organizations that would be realistic to be able to meet. Like I said, it's going to be busy. It's not as though you're going to be able to go booth to booth to booth to booth and have consecutive meetings. You'll be waiting in line a little bit. So if you're expecting that in an hour or 2 hours, you might see several employers, you might, but if you really want to engage in a meaningful conversation, expect that you might see somewhere between 6 and 10 employers throughout the course of the entire day, and make sure that you're asking good questions and making a positive impression. Strongly recommend that you have a notebook to record your questions and their answers, but also do some research and record some of your research in the notebook. Ideally, 1 page per employer. So check out the organization, find out what they do, find out the types of occupations that they're hiring for, check their job board, find out what they see as crucial elements of how they present themselves. What are their values? What is their mission? How is that related to you and your program and your training and your employment goals? These are all important things to know as you're getting ready to talk to an employer and make the most of the conversation that you're going to have with them. If you're on social media, and I'm assuming that most people will be in LinkedIn, certainly, but if you're on Instagram or if you're on X or if you're on Facebook or any other social media they might be using, follow them. And that keeps you current with what's going on at the organization. And sometimes if an employer is checking out your profile, say on LinkedIn, they can tell if you're following, and that's a useful thing. It helps them to see that you're engaged. If the job fair app allows, and I believe it will, register in advance. And if you're able to upload your resume, and I'm not sure if we were allowing that this time, but if you can upload your resume that's focused on the type of jobs that you really want to have, it helps the employer to see your relevant skills and abilities, training and education that will be meaningful to them. Make sure that you're there on time. Don't show up half an hour toward the end of it and expect that you're going to have a meaningful engagement. You won't. But show up a little bit early. Expect that you're going to spend some time in line, and just be ready for the day. Part of being ready, and we'll talk about this in more detail in a moment, is having your elevator pitch ready. And it's an important part because you're going to be introducing yourself to a lot of people. You want to make a positive impression with them so that they know who you are and the value that you bring to their organization. Like I said, on March 4th, you're going to get an email, and that email will give you a full list of the employers participating in the day. You'll be able to explore by industry and by position types. So if you want to look for part-time jobs, you can filter by part-time jobs. If you want to filter by full-time jobs, you can filter by full-time jobs. You'll have links to the organizations. You'll have links to the organization's page within the job fair. So you have a launch point to do some of your research and understand if they've shared what their hiring needs might be. I would save this link on my phone just to make sure that I'm ready for the day, because, you know, if I forget my notebook or I've made my notes, or if I just want a quick refresher, I'll be able to link out to it pretty quickly. So make sure when you get the email, you're saving the link on your device so you'll be able to refer to it the day of the job fair. Already talked about this, so we're not going to dwell too much, but do make sure that you're visiting the employer websites and understanding what their needs are. And if you see what their needs are, if you see their mission, you see their values, you see the types of employment opportunities they're likely sharing that are relevant to you, print a resume that's going to be relevant and meaningful to that employer for the types of jobs that you're seeking. And if you have questions on how to write a resume that's going to be targeted specifically toward an organization's needs, connect with the career services team at the Talent Hub. We'll be happy to help you with that. Or drop in and check in with one of our career peer mentors. They'll be able to give you some insights. We've also got other tools that I'll talk about in a little bit. Make sure you're familiar with their employer information. Make sure if there are events scheduled at the job fair, and I don't think ours has any specific events scheduled. Sometimes you'll see when you're going to an event or a job fair, they might have sort of special breakout sessions and workshops. If there are some that are relevant to you, make sure that you've made a note of it so that you know where you want to be and when you want to be there. Make sure you've identified the employers you really want to see most. Make those your priority stops so that you get a chance to visit them in the course of the day. Like I said, it's going to be busy. Seeing 6 to 10 employers in the course of a day is usually a pretty good win. So I would look to have that list ready to go and make those notes accordingly in your notebook or device. Make sure you have printed hard copies of your resume with you, and make sure that it's current, reflecting where you are in your program, making sure you're sharing and highlighting relevant skills and experiences that will be meaningful to an employer. If you have a LinkedIn profile, I would make sure that it's current and make sure that it is well presented and highlights your most relevant qualifications based on the types of jobs that you're interested in exploring. And again, if you're not sure how to do that, the Career Services team is happy to help out. We have workshops that are upcoming. Oops, and I just noticed that I forgot to change the date. You'll get a list of dates for workshops, I think, with the resources that get sent out. But you can always check the dates for workshops through the Career Services page. And you'll want to make sure that you've got your 30-second self-introduction and you've practiced on VMOC for your 30-second introduction. VMOC will also get you some feedback on your resume. If you haven't seen VMOC yet, VMOC is an artificial intelligence informed application, and we have secured it for free access for students so that you can upload up to 10 copies of your resume, so you can revise and refine your resume and get feedback on format, on content, on presentation to help make sure that you're presenting a tailored resume. And it also has an app that allows you to practice your elevator pitch, which is very useful for events such as introducing yourself at a job fair, but also if you're having interviews and people are asking you that question, tell me about yourself. That 30-second introduction that you can practice with VMOC is very, very helpful. In terms of being dressed appropriately, I think these folks, for the most part, are overdressed. I think the person at the end of the line here is probably appropriately dressed. Try to make sure that you're wearing, a decent pair of jeans or khakis. Make sure that, you've got a button shirt. You don't necessarily have to have a tie or a sport jacket, but make sure that you're sort of in a business casual sort of presentation. Make sure you're wearing closed-toed shoes. Make sure that, the clothes are clean and that they're presentable. I would go minimal on jewelry, minimal on makeup, and that your hair is reasonably well presented. You want to make as positive an impression as possible. You don't want the impression that an employer has when you're walking away is that person didn't come well dressed or ready for the event. They're wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt with holes in it, right? So that person at the end of the line probably is kind of in the right sort of ballpark in terms of what to wear. I'm not sure if our website is going to have a floor layout. We often do that. If there is a directory, and there will be a directory, try and identify which booth your employers are going to be at, the ones you're most interested in. Like I said, don't assume you're going to be able to navigate all of these. Assume that you'll hit between 6 and 10. So mark the ones that you want to see the most. Arriving early helps to ensure that you're going to be able to have that opportunity. It helps you to avoid some of the lines and make a really effective use of your time. When you're at the event, keep notes. You may not make notes right in that moment of a conversation with an employer, but the moment you're done that conversation, jot down the notes of the important points that you talked about so that you can refer to them, especially if you intend to follow up with the employer. In terms of what to bring, I've already mentioned, make sure you're bringing a notebook so you can keep track of your information and also refer to the research that you've done. If you have a clipboard or portfolio or something that's got a hard back on it, just to make sure that it's easier to write. That's useful. It also helps keep your resumes, and if you have a cover letter or business card, helps you keep those all together. Make sure that you have hard copies of your resume, and I would say bring at least 10 or 15. And you want them to be in a portfolio or in a clipboard type situation, because you don't want them to get all folded and messed up. So know that there's no printers available on site, but if you have to go back to the main building at Dune, you'd be able to do that, and maybe use a printer at the library. On the business card front, if you have business cards that have your contact details, your name, your email, your LinkedIn profile, that's useful to do. And if you can include your program name and a little bit of information about you, some specific skills that that feel are meaningful to the employers, that's a good idea. Otherwise, consider using something like Blink. Blink is an online app, and it gives you the ability to create your own business card, similar to this handsome fellow right here. And it'll allow you to put a little bit of personal information and also include contact details. If you want to share a little bit more detail, you're able to do that digitally as well. And that way you can just sort of share your business card through scanning on their phone. And you can probably do the same with them. As you approach, I'm just noticing that I've had the 30-second introduction appear on multiple occasions. I know it's coming up. It's going to be here in just a moment. Oh, and great. I've got somebody writing on the board. Joshua, would you mind taking care of that for me? If you're, thank you. If you are approaching an employer, try to meet them with some confidence. You want to smile. You want to make good eye contact with the employer. And make sure that you are introducing yourself using your 30-second introduction. Don't worry about shaking hands. I think that we've kind of gotten past that. Some employers may default to it. That's your decision whether or not you want to. In your 30-second introduction, you'll want to highlight some relevant skills, maybe your program that might be meaningful to the employer, and be ready with some insightful questions that extend beyond the, are you hiring? And I'll share some ideas with that in just a moment. In terms of your elevator pitch, finally we're getting to this point, or your 30-second introduction. You're going to introduce yourself saying, hi, my name is, in my case, my name is Bill, and I'm going to share what a piece of relevant information. It might be that I have a bachelor's degree or I have a master's degree in whatever the discipline is from home. At Conestoga College, I'm studying whatever the program name is here. Might share some relevant experience. I've got lots of work in customer service experiences for part-time jobs. I've also got extensive sales experience. And, in terms of skill sets, outstanding customer service, strongly organized and very reliable. And if there's something that's more meaningful that might be relevant based on my research, I would share some of those relevant skills too. Practice this introduction, because you want to make sure that you're not going to take much more than 30 seconds. Job fair is going to be busy. There's going to be literally hundreds of students wanting to meet with the various employers. They're not going to give you a lot of time. So 20 seconds of an introduction is probably enough. And you get a chance to practice it on VMOC using their elevator pitch utility. So I would give that a shot. And I've just given a sort of a sample template. You'll be getting the slides, you'll be getting the video, so you'll be able to review this and sort of develop your own elevator pitch that might be appropriate for the job fair event. The page here is just showing you the link for VMOC, and you can access VMOC either using that link, or if you come to the Career Services main page, you'll be able to link out to VMOC there too, and just look for the elevator pitch mode, and then you can practice your pitch. It'll allow you to be in a video sort of call. It'll track your facial features. It'll track whether you're smiling, whether you've maintained eye contact, if you've had a lot of interjections of or like, so that it can help you refine how you want to present yourself to employers. It's a very useful utility, and I'd really encourage people to try it. In terms of the types of questions that you want to prepare for the day of the event, you want to know a little bit about what's meaningful for the jobs that you'd be applying to, but you also want to share with the employer that you've done some research, perhaps prefacing a question like, you know, as at your website, I saw this description, now referring to my notes, about how you perceive yourself in the market, and that this is your mission, these are your values. And I noticed that you have some jobs that I'm interested in. I'm wondering how, you know, your mission and values inform the way that this work is done in the role that I'm interested in applying for. You might explore, you know, how does your organization assess candidates during the hiring and interview process, so you can get a leg up as you prepare for interviews. And any of these questions, quite frankly, I think would be useful to consider adding to your repertoire when you go to the job fair if you're having a conversation with an employer. Don't expect that you'll ask all of these questions in a single meeting. Pick one or two that you feel are most relevant for the job or the interview that you're going to have, or the meeting you're having, so that you can ask questions that are topically related and meaningful, that the employer will say, hey, that's a great question. I'm going to make a note of that person for asking that good question. I've already mentioned this, but there are some questions you don't want to be asking at a job fair. For example, what jobs are you hiring for? That's usually posted at the job fair website. Asking if they'll hire you or if they're hiring for part-time. You should be able to research that at the website. If you found at the website that they haven't shared that information, then it's fair to ask. But don't ask questions that are reasonably going to be covered through the job fair website or at the employer's page. Never ask about wages. Never personalize it and say, do you have a specific job for me? And don't be flippant. I mean, be professional. Something like, here's my LinkedIn URL, look it up if you're interested, probably leaves the wrong impression. If you have your business card with your LinkedIn URL, if you've made a positive impression, they will definitely be looking you up. Make sure that when you're leaving the conversation, you do so professionally. Thank the employer for their time. Let them know that you appreciate the information exchange. Let them know if you intend to follow up by applying online. If there's items that you want to follow up with them about specifically based on the notes that you've been taking in the conversation, make sure you get their contact information and let them know that you'll be reaching out just to say thank you, but also to follow up on the point that you were discussing, because that follow-up shows a level of professionalism and an attention to detail and diligence to get the job done and the information that you need. And employers appreciate that because they're looking for professional people who do that engagement and follow up. So follow through is important. If you've left a good impression, if the employer's left a good impression with you, be sure to follow up with them and let them know that you're grateful for the information that you've received. Brief bit here on swag. At every job fair that I've been that's in person, you're going to have employers that bring some materials to promote their organization, and it might be their team within the organization. There is an etiquette to this process. And I've seen job seekers in the past sometimes just grab a few things, whether they're pens or pencils. Don't be that person. If you've had a good conversation and in a meaningful engagement, ask for permission before you take something, and then allow them to sort of direct you to what they're giving out. It's not appropriate if you're just walking by to reach out and grab a few things. Try to avoid doing that. It leaves a bad impression with the employers. Not that anybody's going to come running up and stop you, or at least not likely to, but you want to leave a positive impression at every opportunity at the job fair. I mentioned the follow-up. Typically, it's appropriate to follow up within 24 to 48 hours. You can do that by reaching out on LinkedIn and looking up the person that you were speaking to and sending them a note to connect and just a brief thank you for the engagement at the job fair. If you have specific questions, you can include them at that time. Otherwise, if you've been able to collect their business card or their business email, I would send them an email that says, thank you very much for your time and the information. I really enjoyed our conversation at the job fair. Maybe you reference a specific point that was important to you. Really appreciate your insights about whatever that point was. And, checked your job board, found a few things that are interesting. I'm looking forward to applying to them. And then ask whether or not it'd be okay to reach out and connect on LinkedIn, or just reach out on LinkedIn and see about the connection, asking whether or not they would be willing to connect because you met them.